Okay, we are on chapter 7, Okada's new play. Jiro leaned against the side door of the Hanaza, gasping for breath. He must try to pull himself together before anyone saw him. What a strange and disturbing day. And as the first day of the new year, what did it mean for the year ahead? Ah! The thought hit his chest like a snowball. He had completely forgotten, to make his New Year pilgrimage. He should have dropped by the shrine at the end of the Dotamorbi this morning on the way to the house, but he'd been so intent on the leaking jug and his anxiety over meeting his mother that it had never entered his head. Jiro would never have prayed from one year to the next, left on his own, but in the past his parents had always got him to the shrine on the first day of the year. Now he had his lack of piety to add to the other troublesome omens of the day. He thought briefly of retracing his steps, but at the moment the prospect of meeting Yoshida along the way was more fearsome than bad luck in the coming year. "I'm back now," he called at the side door. He was forced to call again twice before he heard a scuffling in the hallway, and at last, with the sound of giggles and playful punching, the bolt was drawn and the door pulled inward to let him enter. "Ah, Jiro, welcome back." Minoru wiped his nose across the back of his sleeve. You missed all the fun." TG gave Minoru a punch, and they both began to giggle again. "You boys drink all the sweet wine between you?" Jiro asked. "Not quite," Minoru replied cheerfully, "but we tried, right, TG?" Speak for yourself, piglet," TG answered and took off down the hallway toward the boys' room with Minoru in clumsy pursuit. Jiro closed and rebolted the door. It was obvious that Yoshida had not been around lately. "Yes," Kinji confirmed later, "still sick." With a little luck, though drunk, Ueda was still cautious enough to look carefully at Kinji as he spoke. "With a little luck, it may last through the holidays." "With a little luck," Kinji said, "it may prove fatal." He threw back his head and roared. Everyone screamed with laughter except Jiro. The shock he felt at his friend's flaunting disrespect showed plainly on his face. Or perhaps it was the fact that not an hour before, Yoshida had saved his life. Kinji reached over and rumpled Jiro's hair. "Minoru," he said, "get this lizard face a drink of wine before he spoils our party." Yoshida didn't set foot in the Hanaza for the first 3 days of the new year, but on the 4th he arrived, fully recovered, with a new sign for his notice board. The boys waited impatiently as their elders pressed forward to read the master's amended instructions for Okada's play. "No," groaned Kinji softly, who, being taller, could look over the heads of his elders and see the notice before the other boys. "Why does he do it?" The play was to open in a week, but Yoshida had decided at this late date to shift the manipulators around. He himself would remain as chief operator for the bandit Joman, the leading character, but instead of Mochida on the left hand and Kawada on the feet, Mochida was to be chief operator for Fusamu, a courtesan who helped the bandit escape from the authorities. It was technically a small role. The puppet was seen in only one act, but during the time she was on stage she laughed and wept, even danced, an operator's dream role. Or nightmare, for there, under the names of Mochida as chief operator and Ueno, one of the senior foot operators, as left-hand operator, Jiro saw his own name. He was to be the left foot operator for the character Fusamu. He wasn't ready for such a responsibility. He knew he wasn't. Was that why Kinji was groaning? "Look," said Kinji as if in reply, "look at that." His finger was on his own name. Kinji was to be the foot operator for the bandit Joman. Kawada was to act as left-hand operator. The elder boy's head was in his hands. "Yoshida knows I can't work with him. Why does he do this?" "I think his fever affected his brain," Ueda said in a hoarse whisper. "Look who he has as foot operator for Fusamu." "Hey," said Kinji, "pull your horns of jealousy back in, Ueda. You don't like to do women anyhow. That's good, Jiro. Yoshida's giving you a big chance." "I'm not ready." "Oh, by the time Ueda and I finish with you, you'll be ready, won't he, Ueda?" "Yes," said Ueda grumpily. Kinji gave Ueda a friendly punch. "Cheer up. It's more fun to be head boy than bottom foot operator, you know. Anyway, you'll get your chance soon enough." Ueda shrugged. With the capricious Yoshida, one never knew. To be foot operator for the female puppet has certain difficulties, the first being the fact that the puppet has no feet. Jiro, of course, by now knew how to pinch the inside of the kimono hem with his index and middle fingers to give the illusion of feet, and where to place his balled-up fist to resemble the doll's knees when she was kneeling. But dancing? The very word sent terror through his skull. Dancing with all those delicate mincing steps, those turns, coordinating everything perfectly with the head and hands. Sick with apprehension, he almost gave up eating. Instead, while the others ate, he manipulated the feet of his lady who hung from the rafters, not the real Fusamu, but an old doll Kinji had brought him from the storehouse. The others screamed criticism at him, usually with their mouths full, so his natural anxieties were compounded by his inability to understand half they said. Jiro left the lamp burning long after the others were in their quilts and practiced before the mirror. Minoru's happy snoring was his only accompaniment, though the next day the fat boy complained bitterly about the light having kept him awake all night. And here's some pictures of some of them. In the mornings, Jiro practiced with Mochida and Ueno. At first, Ueno did not attempt to hide his vexation with Jiro's inexperience. The boy once overheard the operator speaking of the mewling infant Yoshida has strapped to my back. But Mochida, as chief operator, though stern in manner, never beat Jiro or kicked him with his high clogs. Jiro was lucky. Poor Kinji's right leg was black and blue from Yoshida's kicks. The days and nights passed in a kind of haze of practice and fear, until quite without warning on the day before dress rehearsals were to begin, Jiro realized that he was no longer struggling to keep up with the men. Fusamu's feet were flowing with the rest of her body. The puppet courtesan was dancing. At the end of the practice, Mochida and Ueno nodded at him. They did not praise him or even speak to him about it. This was not the way at the Hanaza, but they did nod at him, which made Jiro know that they, too, felt that Fusamo had come to life at last. They were ready for dress rehearsals with the rest of the cast. Okada, as senior reciter, never practiced, but one of his assistants, Toyotaki, chanted the text for the scene with young Tozo accompanying him on the samisen. The scene told of Joman the bandit seeking refuge in the house of a courtesan named Fusamu. The woman soon falls in love with the rogue and promises to hide him from the pursuing police. When the authorities arrive, Fusamu allows them to search her house. They find no bandit, just Fusamu's maid and her old bald mother, who according to the courtesan has come up from the country for a visit but has fallen ill. Joman, with much coughing and spitting, gives a convincing portrait of a sick old woman. The police seem satisfied, but just to be sure, they set a 24-hour watch around the courtesan's house. Fusamu begins shrieking and weeping. When the neighbors rush in, accompanied by the agents who have been watching the house, she explains that her old mother has died and sends someone to fetch her country kin, who are in fact Joman's lieutenants, to carry the body to the burial grounds. For the benefit of the agents, Fusamu apparently goes mad with grief and begins to dance, at first sedately, but gradually becoming more and more wild. It takes all three agents to subdue her, and while they are holding her to keep her from harming herself, the countrykin carry out the body. The dance sequence was the crucial one in the scene. Jiro had to stamp his own feet to make the sound of the courtesan's mad steps on the floor. The voice of Toyotaki, the reciter, rose toward the climax, and as it did so, under Jiro's black hood, the sweat broke out on his forehead. But the panic of a week before was gone. He could feel the presence of Mochida and Ueno on either side of him, their bodies tense like wrestlers, their feelings flowing like his into the doll. There was none of the poisons of resentment or anxiety shooting between the three operators now. The trust, the oneness, was taken for granted, and complete attention could be riveted on the doll. When the scene was over, Joman, having been carried out by his cohorts to the shrieks of insane mourning that Toyotaki put into Fusamu's mouth, the three of them hurried Fusamo off the stage. Mochida jostled him as if by accident, but Jiro knew it was the operator's way of thanking him. They had performed well for Yoshida. All three of them knew it, and Yoshida was the only audience they feared. If only my mother could see her clumsy son now, thought Jiro. Later, at supper over rice and dried fish, Kinji spoke to him. Fusama breathed today. Do you think so? Jiro tried to keep the excitement out of his voice. I can't teach you anything more, you know. Kinji avoided Jiro's gaze by adding prickles to his rice and carefully emptying his teacup over it. It would be like a sparrow taking flying lessons from a tortoise. He slurped his rice and tea mixture noisily. That's nonsense, Kinji said. I'm sorry, Jiro said. Is it? Kinji asked. Kinji turned his eyes toward Jiro. They were full of pain. It was Jiro's turn to devote himself to noisy eating. So Kinji's saying to Jiro, like, you're way better than me now. The merchants' purses were full after the new year, since the poor were duty-bound to pay off all their debts before the turn of the year, and they came in force to the opening of Okada's new play. Word had spread even among the elite that Okada had produced something worth seeing. So the high-level samurai, whose code forbade their indulging in anything so vulgar as the theater, donned their large woven hats for disguise, and tried to melt inconspicuously into the crowd sitting on the mat floor of the Hanaza. The mad dance proved one of the most popular scenes, and Jiro's blood warmed to the shouts and applause from the crowd. Not even the ending dampened the merchants' and warriors' enthusiasm. Jiro had wondered how they would respond to the clever Joman, who did, in uncomfortable ways, resemble Saburo. Remember, Saburo is this bandit that's in the town that we keep hearing about. Yet these very men swore publicly that they would put an end to that devil Saburo or die in the attempt. These same men held their fat bellies and guffawed to see Joman wriggle his neck from under the axe and make a laughingstock of his pursuers. Straw hats tumbled off the backs of their heads as samurai slapped their thighs and cried to the puppet, "Banzai, live 10,000 years." The authorities were less amused. Every performance was well attended by known spies and undercover agents. But, as Kinji pointed out, they all pay at the door. So as a result of the combined popularity and notoriety of the play, the Hanaza was doing the best business in town. And that is the end of chapter 7, a little bit of a shorter one there.